You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com. Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 188. This is the Real Estate Rundown with Owen Dashner and Kaasch. We just wrapped up with Casey Gregersen. Great podcast.
Stud.
Yeah, learned so much about him. Did talk to him a little bit afterwards too. He was like, yeah, I'd love to come to Omaha and see how I could make this work. But he goes, my main goal for coming in town to talk would be adding money to my fund. So he goes, I need to make sure that would be okay.
Yeah. So bust out your pocketbooks, people. Let's get him to Omaha. No, great podcast. He was super detailed on the types of marketing he does to drive deals into his funnel. Talks a lot about the data points really that you need to look for and how to operate a marketing channel if you want to, go larger. He's also talking about how he has brought operations, property management, and construction all back in-house after originally basically outsourcing those pieces to third parties. And eventually it didn't go as well as it did at first. So he decided to move those things back in-house when he hit a pretty large number. I mean, he's got, 250 doors that he owns, as well as running a really pretty substantial flipping and wholetailing operation. So just he's done a lot of really cool stuff. Anybody listening to this, I think you'll get something out of it.
I mean, not to mention the 7 yoga studios he had.
That's true. The first yogi that we've had on. You'll hear in the episode how he and his wife decided to basically purchase a business after loving the services. Like his wife had been a customer of a yoga studio, and they ended up buying one and then another and kept going, and they exited that successfully. So that was pretty cool. Little entree into business ownership for franchises specifically.
Yeah. So definitely check that out. That'll be on Wednesday's episode 189. And again, that's Casey Gregersen. But with that, a fun snow-filled week for us here in Omaha.
Fun in air quotes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was super fun when I went over to check on a vacant property last night, and it had ice in the toilet.
But it didn't burst yet, right?
It has not. Yeah. Don't say yet. Okay. Knock on this. It could be fake wood. But knock on this particle.
It's definitely real.
Oh, this is black walnut, I think.
Yes.
Man, every year, just when you think you're out of winter, this is like fool's winter we're in right now. Or next week, it's supposed to be up in the 50s again. Do you see that?
Yes.
So we're going to have like negative 20 actual temps or negative 17 actual temps for Wednesday, Thursday this week, which will have already happened by the time you guys listen to this. But holy crap. Yeah, it's hurt your face cold out there, people.
Well, it's funny. I always talk to my wife because her birthday is on the 17th. And I go, a lot of times you get these really one-off nice 60-degree days on your birthday. And I feel like your birthday is the first day of winter this year.
Yeah, I golfed like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And, it was almost 60 degrees out. And then here we are in the doldrums of winter. Man, can't wait for it to warm up.
Now, pipe freezing, I mean, what are you doing to prevent it? Like, what are some things that you do in your business to make sure that you're checking on vacant units and making sure that you got leave-on agreements and so on?
Yeah, so this will apply to flips especially, because if you have a property listed and it's getting, people that are going over there fairly regularly, obviously you want to make sure you have salt down, you've got the sidewalk shoveled, the driveway, all that stuff, right? But more important than that, even inside the house, you got to make sure the furnace is working as it should, because sometimes I've been lazy in the past. I'll drive by and I'll be like, oh, is there smoke coming out of the chimney? It looks good. And then I'll just go on to the next one if I have a whole bunch of flips going. And then what I learned was, just because that is happening doesn't mean other things aren't going on inside the house. Like if you have plumbing on an outside wall, for example, which you really shouldn't, but if you have, an older home, they did things a little differently back then. If it was DIY homeowner, maybe they rerouted the plumbing, maybe it's sitting on an outside wall. And you see this a lot with kitchen sinks, right? So they'll overlook the backyard a lot of times, kitchens will.
Yep.
And you'll have a sink where you're doing dishes and you can look out the window, but that plumbing is sitting right there on that outside wall, and it could be a big risk of freezing up. A lot of times what happens is if you have your water service on in a vacant property, your hot will generally not be the one that freezes for obvious reasons, but your cold water supply, if it's sitting on that outside wall, a lot of times if the water isn't moving, it can freeze up. And I think this is common sense around the Midwest. But what I've done, and I think it's, again, common recommendation is to open your cabinet doors on any vanities, any kitchen sinks, especially when they're on the outside wall. Change your thermostat batteries. So this house I went over to last night, I walk in and the house is really cold. I can tell it wasn't much different than the outside, which it was super cold yesterday. I go in and I'm turning on the water in both the kitchen and the bathroom to make sure it's running, and it was. But then I look in the toilet and it's like it's all ice. Like the bowl of the toilet is ice. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. So what had happened was the thermostat battery had conked out. So that's a good reminder for me, because I don't do this all the time, but it's a good idea to change those things once a year. And, put a reminder on your phone, maybe set it for, say, like October, November, somewhere around there, and just change your thermostat batteries out, and you can save that type of headache.
I didn't even think about that. I just assumed that they would go right to a running mode, but they'll turn off, huh?
Yeah, they'll turn off completely. Like I couldn't even tell what temperature it was in the house, because it was completely dead. Went home, changed the batteries, went back over, popped right on. So a lot of times that can happen. And then you can also have situations happen where heating and air can be funny. If you have a forced air furnace, it's going to have heating elements in if it's electric, and then if it's gas, it'll have basically the flame manifold where there's like four different
the exchange.
Yeah. So your heat exchanger. So a lot of those can get dirty. So you make sure you change your furnace filters. And when it's running continuously like it is in the really cold times, it's going to put a lot of strain on your furnace. So generally, you want to make sure you have clean furnace filters. Make sure the coil is clean. It can really kind of choke the system if you're constricting the airflow or restricting the airflow there to the rest of the house. So there's some good tips. Yeah.
Because it's really important right now. For the first time ever, I was at my apartment building, and one of the sinks was frozen, and it was the drain line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting.
That's not good.
And I'm like, I've never had this happen in the years. We've had some really cold times. So I went into the basement. And we have a vent in there, but the basement was cold. I was looking at this plumbing down. It comes right down in front of the glass block window that looks outside in the basement.
Yep.
I'm like, well, that makes sense. It's really extremely cold right there.
Yep.
Put one of those little oil heaters down there, and they're kept down low. No problem since.
Yeah. The one caveat is, if you're thinking about, I'll just throw a space heater down there, you got to make sure you have one that isn't going to overheat too. That's also a danger. If you leave those things on, generally they're not designed to run for, 12 hours at a time. So just make sure you have the proper one that you can leave on. Don't put it by anything combustible. Use common sense when it relates to that. But this reminds me, though, I do have one thing I wanted to bring up that really grinds my gears.
Oh, I love it when we should have a segment called "What Grinds Owen's Gears."
You have that too. It seems like every week. But explain to me the logic on this. So I have a house under contract. It was been a rental for a long time. I have it sold. I've been waiting for closing. Right. It's supposed to happen on today. It was supposed to happen at 10 a.m. this morning. So I went over there yesterday and the day before, because I wanted to make sure, hey, is the furnace running? Is the utility room where everything is, the water heater and stuff, is it getting so cold down there that it's freezing the lines, which happens. I go to get there and I have a lockbox, right? A coded lockbox that, for showings and so forth. The key's gone.
That does grind my gears.
Yes. Why does this happen? Could someone explain to me what logic is used here? Is it just that the buyer's agent wants to be like, hey, here's your keys at closing? They want the cherry on top of the closing. Is that the only reason?
That's the only reason.
Because I'm like, why are they taking keys out of the house where somebody is going to be moving into? Why not just leave them there? They're already there. And now I can't get into my own freaking house that I still own, by the way. Right? So it's not theirs for another 24 hours or 48 hours. So I'm like, why are you taking the key?
So usually within 24 hours, those keys are getting taken.
Yeah.
But they have to ask your permission to take those keys.
Did not know that. Well, I didn't know this in this case. Nobody notified me. I just went over there. No keys. Can't get in. I have no idea.
So your agent should have been notified, and they would have to get permission.
He didn't know.
Yeah.
And I checked with him, and I'm like, well, it's too late now. I already left. I'm not going back there in negative 15-degree weather. So good luck with that house. But yeah, that really just irritates the hell out of me every time. So by the way, if you're listening to this and you're a realtor, if you're dealing with an investor, don't do that. Just don't do that. Okay. Leave the keys until you actually own them. The buyers are going to be fine getting them out of the freaking lockbox. All right.
Or if you
don't need the glory.
There's usually more than one key.
Yeah. Well, that's also fair.
And so one key should be in the box. And then if your agent likes to do the key presentation, get the permission, take the backup key and do it.
I don't understand.
It's different if you've bought multiple properties if you're buying your first property specifically, getting that key is just a really meaningful sign. I sign papers. I'm getting something tangible in my hand.
I can tell which side of the fence you're falling.
I'm telling you what it is.
It's so annoying.
But there should be a key in that box at all times.
Yes, I agree. Okay, we agree on that. Disagree on the other part.
Yeah.
All right, how about a topic change here? This is going to be kind of a fun story to talk about. So you and I started talking about this a little bit offline. I wanted to bring this up. This is a little bit of a blast from the past. In 2013, there was a guy named James Howells. James lives in Wales. So he's in the UK. Let's call it that. I'm a little geographically challenged when it comes to that part of the world. So what happened was James was one of the original Bitcoin miners. So basically he's a computer guy, right? So he was using a network of computers to basically mine for Bitcoin. And I won't get into all the details of what that entails, but it's more or less you are validating transactions on the blockchain. And as kind of a reward, I believe that's how this works for doing that. You get a fraction now of a Bitcoin for your efforts. So a blockchain is basically like a ledger. So it keeps transactional history on every time a Bitcoin or Bitcoins has been exchanged. And it's basically like open to the world for the world to see. So it's like here is everything that's happened on this. Here's all record of the transactions and so forth. So he's like one of the OG guys. Now, keep in mind, 2013, Bitcoin was a vastly different landscape than it is right now.
I just read an article about a guy paid 10,000 Bitcoins for a cheese pizza.
Oh my God. I didn't know that, but that is, it'd be hilarious to dig up stories like that and to see if they've been interviewed later on to see how their life is going after that horrific. Oh man, can you imagine? That better have been a kick-ass pizza. It was cheese. That's not even a good pizza. I mean, it's not like, oh man, it's Totino's.
He's
more or less
obviously a teenager.
Grow up, man. Okay, so James Howells, he had 8,000 Bitcoins on a hard drive, and he's a tech guy. So this was a beefed up, nice computer setup that he had. Somehow or another, that hard drive got tossed.
I'd love to know that.
I think there might have been something involved with a girlfriend or significant other who threw out the wrong one, or maybe it was him. I don't want to lay blame at his feet solely here, but this guy has been through a lot in the last 12 years. What happened with the hard drive, allegedly, is it ended up in a landfill in Wales. And he went on this long, drawn-out, basically, effort to be able to access the landfill and excavate until he could find this hard drive, and would never get them to agree. At first, they were politely kind of, no, you can't, there's no way you're going to find it, A, and B, it's going to disrupt regular business operations. They had all these reasons, right? And so finally, it got introduced into what is called the High Council, which is more or less reading between the lines here, kind of like a city council for the area he was in. So the High Council reviewed the case, and they basically said, yeah, we agree with the landfill owners, and you're not going to be able to do this. So he's tried a lot of different methods here.
You're also assuming it's still intact.
That's right. And now his stance on that, and right, it's been 12 years. There's no way you would think that.
Rain and all
But he said it was hermetically sealed, like a special carbon fiber something, where he was 90% sure that if he was able to find this thing, he could resurrect the data. Just finding it, that's all he needed to do. And he's like, I'm pretty sure I can figure this out. Anyway, he went on basically this long effort on getting this done. And what recently happened, so in January, he attempted to sue the High Council and the landfill ownership group for 435 million euro. Now, by the way, if you're not keeping score at home here, 8,000 Bitcoin is worth approximately 750 to 800 million, depending on the day of the week. Bitcoin obviously is very volatile. So he's got, let's call it 750 million. So $750 million. He tried suing for 435 million. That case got thrown out in January of 2025. Now, basically, he's going to venture capital firms, hedge funds. He's offering them as much as 50% of the stake in his ownership for the this thing, if he can recover it. He estimated that it would take him $10 to $12 million to actually find it if they granted him access. So much research he did on this, it ended up leading to him finding a way using AI to have a mechanical arm that had AI tech in it and robot dogs. You can't make this shit up. Robot dogs and basically landfill recovery experts. So he's done an exhaustive search for the right people and ways to do this process. And he's been stymied along the way by every turn he's making here.
It's like a buried treasure he's trying to find.
Yes. So the Space Shuttle Columbia, that was the one that blew up, if memory serves. There was a firm that ended up recovering the black box. He hired that firm to be part of his recovery team for this whole process. So long story longer, now his latest Hail Mary is he is attempting to buy the landfill from the owners so that it can now be his and he can do whatever the hell he wants with it. So it's an ongoing case. It's been going for a long time now already, but it's still unresolved.
And it's got 12 more years of junk in there.
Yes. And so he thinks they have identified the sector of the landfill, not knowing anything about landfills. Evidently, there are sectors that are filled at certain dates. So that's how they track where their next loads of things are going to go to dispose of. And so they've identified what they believe is the sector where that should be existing right now, but it's buried under diapers and, rotten food. And
I couldn't imagine like going through it, trying to figure out, and then you like dissect this multi-acre piece of land.
Yeah.
And then just to look for something that's the size of a hand.
Right. Now, here's really what I find interesting about this. So you would think, all right, $750 million. I mean, that's FU money. That's life-changing. Like, you don't really have to worry about anything else unless you're a complete moron and blow it. But he is now, think about this. This has consumed his life for the last 12 years. And who's to say it's not going to take another 12? So he could literally have 1/3 of his life occupied by nothing more than the hunt for this mythical Bitcoin that he has allegedly in this landfill. Is it worth it?
No.
Would you give up $750 million to have 25 years of your life? I mean, I would at this point, being old.
I mean, I don't know how you get that off of your shoulders once you make a mistake like that.
I just cannot imagine walking around with the knowledge that exists. It's yours, but you can't get it. It's like the ultimate unrequited love.
The outside, outside looking in, you're like, dude, move on, get on, go on through life. You're ruining your life. But on the flip side, if you have that potential, how are you not trying to go for it?
Ooh, let's get him on the podcast. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, you think
it's such a great
you
story.
Think he speaks English?
Well, he's from England.
Okay, yeah.
So I would hope so. Maybe their flavor of English.
You want to reach out to him?
I haven't looked up any of his socials. I mean, we can try. That'd be a great story. So anyway, that was
the start of our non-real estate podcast.
Exactly. Now, switching to something else in the news here that is a little more real estate related. You want to hear this story out of the Motor City?
I love to hear all your stories.
Okay. So here's one I dug up. This is actually pretty recent. So this is as of about a week ago. We've talked about this on past episodes where there have been instances where companies or people have attempted to or actually did tokenize real estate transactions. Mm-hmm. So meaning they basically create shares, like fractionalized shares. And this is similar to like a syndication, like you would normally raise money for
there's a company called Fractional out there.
Yep. You would raise money for a deal, and typically you would have either, friends and family as a 506B syndication or a 506C as accredited investors only. This actually allows for a $50 minimum investment. So pretty sweet deal. If you wanted to participate in real estate but not deal with all the headaches, you just wanted to dip your toe in without jumping in, that might be a good way, right?
Hey, all the rookies out there that always want to say they're a real estate investor.
There you go.
Get your first $50 in, I can say it.
I own 1/1,000,000th of a deal in Detroit. That's what you could say here. So this company is called Realty. They're a Florida-based firm.
We're talking about real estate, or are we talking about testosterone here?
I know, right? This is a company that owns 1,200 units in Detroit.
Okay.
As well as other cities in and around the Midwest. Their Detroit properties in particular have really come under fire recently because, not literal fire, that'd be my department with Molotov cocktails, but they've recently come under fire for substandard housing conditions, tenants having no leases in place at all, at least $2 million in unpaid taxes and blight tickets. So the city of Detroit, and that's saying something, No shade against, a beloved manufacturer of cars, but they don't have the best reputation for real estate activity and corruption in their government and so on and so on. Blight tickets, that really jumped out at me as a very large number for getting that type of city code violations.
Growing too fast or what?
Oh, good question. So they being the owners are blaming this on is a property management company that they allegedly hired and were completely failing to perform on the day-to-day activities that they're supposed to be doing. So step one is showing apartments or housing units and getting a lease signed. I mean, that's pretty basic. I think you and I could even do that, right?
We like to hope so, yeah.
Yeah. But apparently there's just no leases. They aren't handling repairs. They aren't paying attention to maintenance requests, all the basic blocking and tackling. It sounds like it was a money grab, and then they just pieced out. So this is an ongoing thing, and apparently they're trying to take steps to make it right with the city. I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing just implodes. So stay tuned for that. If you want to catch this news story, just Google Real T, all one word. And again, it's a Florida-based company. They own a lot of stuff in the Midwest, particularly Detroit here, if you want to look more into this article, because it's super interesting. The moral of the story, Ted, is great deals can be completely undone by failed operations.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that.
So
see that over and over again.
Yes. And so you may find a smoking deal, but if you don't know how to operate it, or if you just completely take your eye off of the ball with running the day-to-day stuff, it can really turn a good deal or a great deal into a horrible deal for you. So operations, that's today's word of the day. Pay attention to your business and keep your eye on the ball with operating it. Otherwise, bad stuff happens.
So I took over all my short-term rental management.
Nice segue.
Last week. And it has been eye-opening, to say the least.
Are you regretting all of the systems and processes you layered on with your monstrosity of a?
It's a temporary thing because the ultimate goal is to sell these properties off soon. But I need to show the value of these properties now, because there are a couple units were going unrented for a period of time.
Yep.
But now that I've taken over everything, I'm now getting quite a bit of bookings coming in. Right now I'm running 6 Airbnbs, and to see the bookings coming in and handle the cleaning. And I'm not handling cleaning, but outsourcing it. But just being the guy that is directing everything, it is kind of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Especially with the snow we've gotten. Like I can't tell how many times I had calls for snow, questions about sheets. I had somebody try to scam me this weekend.
How?
They took a piece of chocolate, made it look like a turd, a mouse turd, and then said, I have a turd in the middle of my bed and I want a full refund. Well, after cleaning the place, and find out that they ate chocolate cookies in the bed and the comforters were covered in yellow piss. So we had to throw everything away. And then I was checking the profile out, and like this particular person's like, says he's from Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I used the Forewarn app, looked him up, and they're from Omaha. And,
oh, really?
And then I found all these like drug dealing charges on them and everything like that.
Oh,
so, like 21-year-old. And I'm like, okay, so you're just trying to get a free stay.
Yeah.
You had your Valentine's Day fun on my sheets. And
gross.
And so
golden showers apparently were involved.
That's what it looked like, yes. I was trying to avoid that. But yes, that's exactly what we saw. I had another person that, was at the volleyball tournaments that were in town, and super kind and everything. And they're like, we're trying to get an extra day here and we can't book it. And then it kept me 18 hours of nonstop. Can't get figured out. Customer service, and there was some issues happening on the pricing, but when it came time to get figured out, they weren't like doing their part.
Okay.
And then, well, at the end of it, I think they just wanted a place to keep their luggage for like an extra 12 hours. And like, I think we're just going to head home after this. It wasn't worth all the pain. And I'm like, oh man, I'm really, really hating this job I've taken on right now.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I've never operated 6 of them, but the one I have, I'm not upset that I'm not doing it anymore. I put it that way. You got to be on all the time. That's the thing. If you're managing it yourself, it's like you got to reply like that, immediately.
You do.
Otherwise, they'll just book something else, or they'll give you a crappy review. So you really have to, be on your game.
And right now, I'm just like, I just want to show the value of the building.
Yeah.
So that way I can list it and say, hey, if you communicate really well and keeping the place extremely clean, good cleaner crew, this is what this place can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ultimate goal.
Nice.
You have a golden nugget to review here, Owen?
I do have a
golden nugget. And this Golden Nugget is brought to you by JM Real Estate Capital.
Hi, it's Rob, JM Real Estate Capital. We're the money guys that you need to know for all your real estate investments. Talk to us. We can do what your local bank can't or won't do. We don't have millions, we have trillions with a T to lend. 844-WE CLOSE or go online at jmrecapital.com. That's jmrecapital.com. JM Real Estate Capital, smart solutions for the real estate investor.
Okay, so I had a phone call probably a couple days ago. This is a good reminder in general for other people out there. Doesn't matter if you're an investor yet, but whenever you are, especially, you really have to do what you say you're going to do when you're dealing with new people that you don't have a relationship with. And even more so if you do know them, you need to maintain your reputation and all that stuff. There's a couple of guys, and they have really made an effort to go down a path that not many really do, which is wholesaling apartment buildings. So you see this a lot more in the single family space. So a la David Bader, right? So he's really mastered his craft in that aspect and has made some huge transaction assignment fees over the years. And these guys, I know people who know them. I don't know them all that personally, but I got a call from him, and he had 3 properties that he was dealing off market, direct to seller. They had agreed on a price, and he was letting them know what the price would be to buy it. Okay. So they'd take an assignment fee. I don't really care what the assignment fee is. It does not matter to me if the deal pencils out well. Like if the price they give me checks out and I can, it's going to fit for the deal, I'm not going to try and negotiate it. So what happened was I indicated interest in it was probably about it was like 40 or 50 unit package. There were like 4 different multifamily properties part of this one package from one seller. They had offered it to me. I indicated interest, but they had already been talking with someone else, another group. Evidently, this group and this wholesaler arrive at a price. They go to get the paperwork signed. And I don't know if this was at closing. I don't want to misspeak here, but it was either right at the purchase agreement signing or right at the closing table signing. They basically said, I know we talked about X for the price, but we're only willing to pay you Y. And the difference was
at the closing table.
Yeah, the difference was 60%. So I don't know what the fee was. Let's call it $100,000 because that's the number that I was thinking. They basically said, we'll give you 40 instead of 100. That is a lot of money. Yeah. And even if it wasn't that big of a number, the percentage wise, so it really put these guys, obviously it left a bad taste in their mouth, but they ended up accepting it because they were already, all the way through this whole process. And they're like bird in the hand, they didn't want to risk losing the deal out to another one and time going by and et cetera, et cetera. So they ate it. And now I would assume that they're pretty pissed. Basically, they used the low amount of time remaining in the deal as leverage against the wholesaler and held him hostage to a lower price, and they had to take it. And now he said to me, and this isn't me, it could be anybody, but he basically said, I really wish I had somebody more reputable involved in the buy side of this transaction like you that would have gotten this done without trying to jerk me around at the last minute. And I was like, amen, man. Like I'm really sorry that happened. That sucks. You can't, unfortunately hold everybody to the same standards because people just don't view life that way, I guess. But the message here is do what you say you're going to do, because guess what? A result of this now is I think this wholesaler is going to bring deals to me, not the person that basically skinned the sheep, right? Instead of just paying them what they what would have worked for the deal and then going through the transaction, they decided to use leverage on it, and it's going to bite them in the butt later.
I hear this a lot on the opposite side with hard money lenders, where a price, and I'm not referring to your company.
No, yeah, go ahead. I've heard this too.
But there's multiple ones in town, and they come to the closing table, and then the number that was agreed upon, let's just say it's 18%. And you're like, oh, I'm thinking I'm going to get an 18% loan.
Yeah.
And then it's 20, 24, 26, 28%. I've also dealt with a hard money lender on a deal where it wasn't the percentage, it was like the money down,
the points.
The points. Yeah, thank you. And that was not what we agreed on. But you're stuck.
Yeah, because you're a couple of days away from closing, and it's like you don't have time to take to somebody else.
It's at closing table. Like they're signing the papers at the title company. Never had any idea.
Hope it was worth it. to whoever did that, because they're never getting you again as a customer.
No.
And you're the most referral producing guy that I've ever met.
So I mean,
so that was a huge miss.
I just don't understand why people will do that to other people, especially in those situations, a business situation. But there's a guy that we all know that is done this to so many people now.
Yeah.
And then that name keeps on coming up, and I'm like, hey, that particular person, I got nothing personally bad to say about him, but don't expect to pay that number at the closing table.
That exact situation happened to Colin, one of my business partners. Yeah.
As one of the people
at closing table.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here we are now. We own a hard money lending company and are probably absorbing a lot of customers that are not wanting to be treated that way.
I know that every time that particular person that we're discussing that deal comes through, I'm like, hey, you might want to try liquid lending or somebody
Thanks,
else,
buddy.
Because what's advertised isn't what's expected, and you got to do what you're going to say you do.
Exactly.
It's a small town here, and even no matter where you're listening, your reputation matters. And I guarantee you that there's a circle of people that are discussing whatever you promised and didn't deliver on.
Yeah, it takes a long time to develop your reputation in a good way, and one bad deal, one bad something that happened where you didn't do what you said you were going to do, and you could ruin your reputation.
Yep.
So you got to be vigilant about that, just like being an Airbnb host. Got to be vigilant.
Of course.
All right, man. Well, that was a good rundown. What do you think? Should we get out of here?
Yeah, let's roll. And stay tuned to episode 189 coming this Wednesday. And if you guys love what you hear, please share this episode or any other episodes with somebody that could get something out of this, that you maybe want to get into real estate. Maybe they love real estate investing. Maybe they just haven't listened to a podcast yet. And
there you
would
go.
Be a great first option. But with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
Thanks for tuning in. You've been listening to the Real Estate Rundown with Owen and Ted. Have a great week.
Deuces.
This episode is also brought to you by PropStream and Magic Door.